You can see the hectic work that we're going through here. This is not only today. We started this from the last 7th day up to today. Today we're burying 5 at a go. We're going to bury more. We only want to alert the public. The COVID is real, and therefore protect yourself. Observe the national protocol measures to protect yourself, protect your family, and let's protect the country image as a whole.
Tonight on Joy News Prime, drama in Parliament as members of Parliament who tested positive for coronavirus refused to stay home.
Yesterday, it was observed that one person who had been spoken to had gotten close to some members of Parliament.
Kombongo MP Ras Mobarak describes those MPs who have refused to self-isolate as witches and wizards.
A member of staff would be asked to stay away from the precincts of Parliament, and that staff or member or whoever that person is would actually come to this place and actually have interactions with colleagues and members of Parliament. That is witchcraft, to say the least.
Also in this bulletin, minority spokesperson on health, Kwabena Mintah Kando, reiterates calls for Parliament to immediately shut down following MPs and staff testing positive for the virus.
The Speaker must be firm. As a matter of urgency, Parliament must be closed with immediate effect.
Meanwhile, 70 doctors across the country test positive for COVID-19. 148 nurses and 18 midwives also test positive for the virus. We'll be speaking for the Ghana Medical Association and the Ghana Nurses and Midwives Association. And in business,
Industrial and Commercial Workers Union worried about well-being of employees as some companies fail to pay workers due to pandemic.
And later in the bulletin, EC boss Jean Mensah announced defense for the Commission's decision to create a new register for the December polls, insisting the existing voters register is susceptible to manipulation, which could endanger and change the outcome of an election.
It is our desire that we leave no room for manipulation at the polling station. Under the current situation, any manipulation there could have dire consequences for our election, in the sense that it could change the outcome of an election.
My name is Aisha Ibrahim. We're live in our studios in Kokomlemle on digital address GA099259, on digital terrestrial TV because we are free to air. And the bulletin is also live on DSTV channel 421 and GoTV channel 144. Please stay with us. Now, very first story, COVID-19 case count now stands at 10,856, 144 cases shy of 11,000. Recoveries are now 3,921 and 48 deaths. This puts active cases at 6,887. All 16 regions in Ghana have recorded cases. Greater Accra has 6,791. Ashanti region has 1,905. Western region has 874, and Central region has 539. The Volta has 212. Eastern region has 204. Upper East has 128. The Western North has 79. Oti region has 47. The Northern region has 37. Upper West region has 22. The Bono East has 13 cases. Northeast has 2. Savannah has 1. Bono has 1. And Ahafo has 1 case. Now, leadership of Parliament and COVID-19 team are frustrated as members of Parliament and staff who have tested positive for the virus defy orders to self-isolate. Presenting the business statement, Majority Leader Osei Mensah Bunsu cautioned persons who have tested positive after the mandatory testing and have been contacted to stop visiting the house. That's why my MP observed the affected persons, including some journalists, have defied the communications from the COVID-19 team that they should stay away following their positive results.
Speaker, you and leadership arranged for all of us to be tested for the coronavirus disease that unfortunately has engulfed this country. The arrangement was that anybody who unfortunately tested positive would not be openly identified, or that the testing team would have an arrangement to contact them behind the curtains and have the situation managed. This has been the arrangement. Unfortunately, some people have elected, after contact is made with them, to ignore the appeal from the team, and they visit Parliament, and they endanger the lives of all of us. I think the team is getting frustrated, and we want to appeal once again to members, staff and journalists that if you are contacted, please don't come and imperil the lives of people. Yesterday, it was observed that one person who had been spoken to had gotten close to some members of Parliament.
Minority Leader Haruna Idrisa assured that confidentiality of medical records remains of extreme paramount, hence urged the said patients to self-isolate.
Got to urge colleagues and staff of the parliamentary service to do a little more than respect your orders and directives relative to COVID, whether it is testing, isolation where the person is affected, or quarantine. Medical records remain medical records, confidential to an individual, and we all should respect it. The fact that somebody has undertaken an examination in COVID of a public health problem does not necessarily mean that we can just share the medical information or record of that person.
Meanwhile, Speaker of Parliament Professor Michael Quay says the medical team will conduct another test next week for MPs and staff of Parliament. He warns that any MP or journalist who fails to conduct the test will be banned from entering the premises of Parliament.
The minority leader has spoken. I have the duty to confirm that it is a directive that every person who operates from here as an MP, as an official, or as an invitee, such as a media person, must heed our directive. It's not a request now. Our directive to do a test. We are arranging for another time for the relevant personnel to come to your doorstep. After that, those who don't want to test don't want to enter our premises. And that is also a directive. If a person wants to endanger his or her life, you have no right, as a human rights issue, to extend it to other people. And that is very, very clear.
Meanwhile, Minority spokesperson on health, Kwabena Mensah Akando, has reiterated calls for leadership of the House to immediately shut down the House for MPs to self-isolate following admission by the Majority Leader that some members and staff of the House have tested positive for COVID-19. According to him, the initial denial by the Majority Leader when the news broke is shocking and shameful. Speaking to the press, the Joaboso MP said Speaker of Parliament should be bold and close the House without any delays.
Listen, to be frank with you, when I heard this, I was exceedingly shocked. Because if you remember, this is the same Majority Leader who bastardized, who vehemently disagreed with Honorable Muntaka, the Minority Chief Whip. When the Minority Chief Whip was saying that we should not cover up just like all Ghanaians, if there are positive cases in Parliament, the entire country must know. Now this same person comes back to tell us on the floor of the House that there are members of Parliament who have tested positive and they are still with us on the floor of the House. He goes ahead to say that there are some staff that he saw yesterday interacting with members of Parliament who have tested positive. How did he get to know now? All of a sudden now he knows. How did he get to know? And who is he reporting to? He's the leader of the House. What has he done about that? As at the time the minority chief whip stated that we should not cover up, the CI 126 had not matured. So the majority leader was of the opinion that if it becomes worse, Parliament will shut down, and then the CI 126 will not get matured. Now he has waited until the CI 126 has matured. He's coming back to tell us that now he's privy to those who have contracted the virus. I am ashamed. And for me, the Speaker must be firm. As a matter of urgency, Parliament must be closed with immediate effect. Because if people have tested positive and they have communicated it to them and they still come to Parliament, we are at a very high risk.
That is Minority Spokesperson on Health speaking there. But speaking also to Joy News, the Kumbungu MP, Ras Mobarak, said such MPs and staff should be forcefully evicted from the presence of Parliament. He described those who defied orders of Speaker to self-isolate as witches and wizards.
Well, clearly that is shocking and very worrying. Shocking that a member of staff would be asked to stay away from the precincts of Parliament, and that staff or member or whoever that person is would actually come to this place and actually have interactions with colleagues and members of Parliament. That is witchcraft, to say the least. You know, and as you may have heard me say on the floor, it is unforgivable, and we take great exception to this very irresponsible act, you know, and I think leadership would have to take necessary measures to make sure that there is compliance and to make sure that those persons involved are actually quarantined. You know, I think that is the way to go. I initially was for the shutting down of Parliament, right? But if you look at attendance in the House lately, realize that there are many colleagues, because of the primaries in their respective constituencies, especially from the other side, you know, so the chamber is largely empty, you know, and the social distancing protocols can be observed within the chamber. But I think, you know, what has happened is most unfortunate, and we just should not take kindly to any one member of staff or MP endangering the lives of members and staff who work here. I think it's irresponsible to.
Now, joining me via phone is Dr. Augustina Angelina Silverkin, research scientist and virologist at the Kumasi Center for Collaborative Research and lecturer at KNUST. Doc, good evening for joining us. Doc, meanwhile, 24 health workers in the Mfantsiman municipality have been infected with the coronavirus disease. The situation, according to Municipal Health Directorate, has hugely affected the staff strength, as many of the health staff who have been exposed must go into isolation. Deputy Director of Nursing Services at the Mfantsiman municipality, Theresa Nana Yankson, says her outfit has had to reorganize its staff to ensure that the staff left are able to handle the workload at hand. Richard Kwejonyako has more in the following report.
The 24 house staff who have tested positive for the virus is out of the 72 recorded cases in the municipality as of June 9, 2020. Deputy Director of Nursing Services at the Sopon Government Hospital, Theresa Nana Yankson, gives details of recorded cases, recoveries, and deaths.
Mr. 3 of them have been on treatment, out of which 36 have recovered and discharged. giving us a recovery rate 57.1%. One death has been recorded in the municipality. 24 health workers have been infected with the disease in their line of duty. We pray for all affected individuals and wish them speedy recovery.
She laments the infected workers and their contact at the hospital, some of whom are also health staff, had been quarantined. And this has had a further toll on the staff strength.
Yes, in case a staff gets infected, all the units, the staff around that particular staff, will be quarantined, and in effect affect the clients or the patients. So it really affect the staff strength. We will try and read some reshuffling. We pick some of the nurse and go to that to help. That's what I've been doing, even though it's still not the best.
Theresa Yankson says it's obvious that inadequate PPEs were a hindrance to the fight against the coronavirus and appealed for public support.
As all of you might have been aware, the inadequacy of PPE and the important logistics like non-contact infrared thermometer, liquid soap, tissue paper, etc., have been a major hindrances facing us in the fight. Government has done a part by giving some of these items, but because they are mostly disposable, there will never be adequate, and hence the need for frequent supply of these items.
The Pacific Oil Company Limited donated PPEs to the hospital valued at 30,000 Ghana cedis. Operations Manager of Pacific Oil, Sunday Bayabua, said they donated the PPEs in response to appeals made by health officials in the municipality over the rising cases of infected health staff.
As part of our corporate social responsibilities, and in giving back to the community, we thought it wise to donate PPEs to these facilities in order to help the government in fighting the novel pandemic, COVID-19. The area that we donated, Mfanteman, we understand a lot of health workers have been affected or have been infected with the COVID-19. So that's informed our decision in choosing Infanteman.
Richard Kwejenya Akon, Joy News, Cape Coast.
The Ghana Medical Association is meanwhile calling for more attention for frontline health workers as 70 doctors test positive for the virus. Joining me via Zoom for more is Dr. Titus Bayo, Deputy General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. Doc, how are these 70 doctors faring, and how is this affecting the country's fight against COVID-19?
Good evening, Aisha, and good evening to your viewers. Indeed, a lot of these doctors have already recovered. This is our count from the time the pandemic started. And so some have recovered and are back to work. Others are still in the process of self-isolation and waiting to be tested again to be confirmed. So to a large extent, they are doing well. As we speak now, there's no doctor in intensive care anywhere, but we have doctors who are still positive, who are waiting to be confirmed negative. And in terms of the impact on healthcare delivery, yes, it's not only those who test positive, but even those who have to isolate because of exposure. It affects the workforce. And that is why we are expressing concern and asking for measures to mitigate against this trend.
So you're calling on government to pay attention to frontline health workers. What exactly are your demands?
So the first thing is the issue of testing. We think that testing of health workers should be prioritized. We've made this call over and over. We have heard that it is in the policy that they should be prioritized, but on the ground, we are not seeing that. You have samples of health workers taken, including doctors, and sometimes it takes weeks, days for the results to come back. And this is not inuring to good to our fight. Secondly, hospital-based samples, patients that we've taken their sample, and we need the results to take critical clinical decisions. The delays also in this group is unacceptable, because it is by these two means that mainly we get a lot of health workers exposed. So we are calling for prioritization of samples coming from hospitals, either from patients or health workers there. And then finally, an improvement in the PPE distribution and availability to health workers to use. This can help us minimize the risk of exposure among doctors and health workers in general.
Dr. Bayo, hold on for me. I want to bring in Daniel Chum Tinkran, who is the General Secretary of the Ghana Nurses and Midwifery Association. Daniel, you must be worried that over 160 members of the association have tested positive for the virus.
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly well.
Yeah, good evening, Aisha, and good evening to Dr. Titus Bayo and your viewers. Indeed, it's quite troubling. We are in troubling times, but we take consolation in the fact that nurses and midwives are very patriotic people, and we're bridging the storm, and we believe that once the required logistics are supplied, we can deliver the job as we are supposed to. But as was recounted rightly by Dr. Titus Bayo, indeed, it is something that is worrying, especially at this time that patients are presenting with symptomatic, or they come with the disease, having signs and symptoms of the disease. All right. Previously, most of the patients that were coming to our facilities were asymptomatic, all right, and the rate of recovery was quite high. Now that people are presenting with the disease or signs and symptoms of the disease, it tends to mean that they are more likely to decline to critically ill states and the rest of it. So we need to really up our game as a country. But I can tell you that we are really in troubled times as nurses and midwives.
Now, your association complained about lack of personal protective equipment. Is this still an issue? And could this be reasons why many of your members are contracting the virus?
It's certainly the reasons why the people are contracting the virus. We've said it a couple of times that people are not getting in adequate quantities whatever it is required for them to use. Indeed, as I also said, we need to look at the trajectory of the disease and see how best we can modify the management protocols. Initially, we were looking at triage system, putting people in isolation bay and then treatment centers. I think that we need to modify the process now because people are coming. Once they are showing signs and symptoms or they are suspected case of COVID, I think we need to have an isolation center, okay, where they will be taken care of by people that are well-trained and are having the requisite PPEs, all right? Before, when they test positive, they are transferred to the isolation centers or the treatment centers, all right? So there is a gap, and we need to fill in that gap. Otherwise, more of our people, including the doctors, will be infected, all right? Because if you admit a patient onto an ordinary ward, it will turn out that the patient is not positive. But later, if the test becomes positive, what happens? All right, and the delay in coming with the results. Once the result delays, then obviously we are putting ourselves in danger. Several nurses and midwives will pass through the shift, all right, and get themselves exposed. And that's exactly what is happening.
So certainly government needs to pay more attention to frontline health workers because they are the ones leading the fight against the virus. I'm grateful for your time, Daniel Tinkran Chum, who is General Secretary of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwifery Association, and Dr. Titus Bayo is the Deputy General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association. Still to come in this bulletin, EC boss Jean Mensah mounts defense for the Commission's decision to create a new register for the December polls, insisting the existing voters register is susceptible to manipulation, which could endanger and change the outcome of an election.
We leave no room for manipulation at the polling station. Under the current situation, any manipulation there could have dire consequences for our election, in the sense that it could change the outcome of an election.
There is more when we return from this break. Time for business. Sandra Penny is here with the very latest. Hi, Sandra.
Hello, Aisha. We know it's difficult times for a lot of businesses.
It will be painful if you're working and you're not being paid.
The IC is actually worried about that.
They should be.
About business,
take it away, Sandra.
The employee.
Yes.
All right, celebrating 25 years of joy. My name is Sandra Estinam Appen. I'm always here for business. We'll bring you that headline story, but first, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture has imported modernized farming equipment for small-scale farmers under the Planting for Food and Jobs program. The equipment, made up of multi-purpose tractors, will be given out to farmers at 50% subsidy. My colleague Bismarck Awusa joined a team on a field trip to the Ewutu camp prison at Kasoa and has filed the following report.
As part of government's vision to equip especially small and medium-scale farmers under the Planting for Food and Jobs program, the Agric Ministry has imported some farm equipment. The Czech Republic credit facility will be sold to Ghanaian farmers under 50% subsidy. Director of the Ministry's Agricultural Engineering Services Directorate is Amatus Diang.
The problem we have in this country, that farmers have, is harvesting of rice. And if you don't harvest on time, one, you have shuttering in the field, will lead to post-harvest losses. We actually spend so much money to import rice. So if we are able to produce rice locally, that import bill will be cut down.
The demonstration of the multi-purpose tractors was held in the Ewutu camp prison at Kaswa. According to Knights AS suppliers of the tractors, the equipment comprises passive and active accessories such that the farmer only requires the gearbox to switch between the implements from slashing to plowing through to harvesting. Chief Executive of the company, Dr. Carl Lai, says the equipment seeks to graduate peasant farmers from the use of hoes and cutlasses to modernized equipment.
Once you're having the tractor, we've given you an accessory, which is what we designed. And I can tell you that what we designed, I don't know, I don't want to boast, but I haven't seen it any over here. It was the Ministry of Food and Agriculture which requested us to do this thing. So we don't sell tractors, we sell solutions.
President of Nyonkodo Farmers Association, Rebecca Abuaje, lauded the initiative.
We are thankful to government for these tractors. I believe it will help us in various ways. I urge my fellow farmers to patronize these equipments.
Bismarck Awusa, Joy Business.
Now, it's a fact that businesses globally are struggling in these COVID times, but the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union, the ICU, is worried about the well-being of employees. The General Secretary of the union, Solomon Korte, although admitted the hospitality industry is one of the hardest hit, he's unhappy about the failure on the part of Holiday Inn to pay workers since April this year. Alberta BCU has more.
It's been months since Ghana announced its COVID-19 cases, and the numbers keep rising. Some businesses have been hit hard during this pandemic. Here at the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union, I find out how members of this union have been affected by this pandemic.
The COVID-19 pandemic has become a threat to many businesses. The aviation and the hospitality sectors have been greatly affected. This is according to the General Secretary of the Industrial and Commercial Workers Union, ICU, Solomon Korte. He, however, regrets Holiday Inn's failure to pay workers since April.
With the government coming in to look at that sector specifically and wanting to vote over 3 billion or so to see how it can, sustain the business and at the same time help alleviate the pains and the difficulty of the employees who are out there. And at the moment, we say thumbs up to all the general managers except Holiday Inn, who have not done the needful. As of now, he has not paid the workers April, May, and we have entered into June.
Mr. Korte also added his voice to call on hotels to be included in the free water supply.
In fact, the president did not specify that if you are commercializing it, then for you, you will not. Rather, it went further to say that those who have been selling water in their vicinity, okay, they should give the water free, and the tanker waters that they buy, government was going to pay it to them. Now, for water and sewage to make the argument that the hoteliers are running a commercial bit with it, okay, then the conflict of interest comes. If somebody who is selling water, government is going to pay for him, and then the hotelier who is also not getting people to even occupy for him even to pay, that the skeletal type that you have over there, that one they expect him to pay. We think that is unfair.
Meanwhile, the Director of Labour Research and Policy Institutes of the Trade Unions Congress, Kwabena Nyakuotu, says government should scale up its support to businesses to protect jobs.
For us, it is crucially important to support businesses, but also ensure that those businesses keep their workers. In keeping their workers, you maintain a certain level of consumption, which is good for the economy. At the same time, it helps the businesses. But once the crisis passes, they don't have to be going around looking for workers with the required skills. And the government has much deeper pockets than ordinary workers and ordinary businesses. You understand? That is why also in our report we have suggested a means of financing some of these measures. Okay, so we are not just proposing, but we are also offering solutions on how you finance. Such laws like the Fiscal Responsibility Act are made for normal times. And once you are not in a normal times, it is not possible to keep the things you did in normal times.
That'll be all for now. I'll be back for the second dose of business. But coming up next is sports news with Ulrich Wampofo. Stay tuned.
And on your election headquarters, the existing voters register is susceptible to manipulation, which could endanger and change the outcome of an election. That's according to the chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Jean Mensah, who has been mounting a strong defense for the Commission's decision to create a new register for the December polls. Jean Mensah explained that the use of the current voters register will force the Commission to rely mostly on manual verification, since capturing of fingerprints were poorly done. She also argued the acquisition of the existing voter ID card under CI-12 was fraught with illegalities, since electoral officers failed to capture the source document for the registration. The NDC has dragged the EC to court over the exclusion of the existing voters ID. But the chairperson of the Commission, in an interaction with the Trade Union Congress of Ghana, observed the creation of a new register is to promote free, fair and transparent elections.
As experts advised us right from the onset that in acquiring the new system, you would be changing the operating system of the biometric voter, the system operating the biometric voter management system. And it meant that you had to migrate the data. You had to migrate the data from the old system to the new system. The result was that you could risk, and we did stand to risk, losing a lot of data of citizens who had registered. The result would be that you would go on registration, you go on voting day, and your names were missing from the register. And this was not a risk that we wanted to take, because it meant that several people, and you could not tell who, but as you migrated from the old system onto the new system, you risk losing a lot of data. And I can imagine the fury and the uproar that would go on in this country if people go to the on voting day to vote and their names were not captured. In their view, this was a big risk, and we felt that we didn't want to go forward with this risk. In their view also, the quality of the fingerprints raised issues. The capture of the fingerprints was poorly done in several instances. And even as you migrated, you risk losing even the images, the quality of the images, even as you migrated. And the result was that you would end up with a high incidence of manual verification, which we have come to observe. What happens then is that, well, you come with a card, and we allow you to vote. This could lead to manipulation, in the sense that the card may not belong to you, and because we don't have the feature of facial recognition, you could come in with a card and you're allowed to vote. And anybody, if there's collusion at that level, at the polling station level, it could lead to a high incidence of manual verification. The second reason is that the register lacks credibility. It is bloated. We have a number of dead persons on the register, and we have not been effectively able to clean this. Under this new system, we are working out modalities to be able to expunge the names of the dead from the register periodically. But we also have the issue of foreign nationals on our register. And the Supreme Court recognized this in 2014, 2015, when it ordered the Commission to expunge the names of persons who had used the National Health Insurance card to register. And so I just want to, put it out that as a Commission, our desire is to ensure that it is only those who qualify to vote who vote. And it is our desire that we leave no room for manipulation at the polling station. Because under the current situation, any manipulation there could have dire consequences for our election, in the sense that it could change the outcome of an election. Assuming that in every polling station you have a bloat and there's collusion, and polling agents turn a blind eye, and people are allowed to manually verify. What could happen is that, assuming that you decide that 10 people you verify 10 people manually, and these people do not exist, but you stuff the ballot boxes by 10 because it's bloated anyway, so there will not be the issue of overvoting. It means that if you multiply 10 by your 33,000 polling stations, you are going into close to 350,000 people. And that is enough to change the outcome of an election. And these are some of the reasons that informed our decision to compile a new register.
Let's now turn our attention to the Convention People's Party, which earlier on Friday launched its 71st anniversary celebration on the theme Fostering Peace and Unity, the Way Forward for the CPP. The party was birthed on 12th June 1949 before a crowd of some 60,000 people, which had gathered on the old polo ground after founder Kwame Nkrumah resigned as General Secretary of the UGCC. Of course, the rest, they say, is history, as he subsequently became Ghana's founding president. But over the years, the party has failed to regain the glory that endeared it to Ghanaians and has been unsuccessful in making a comeback at the presidency. I will be joined shortly by the 2016 flag bearer of the party, Ivor Greenstreet, to discuss the party's relevance in the current political scene. If you can hear me, good evening to you. Thanks for your time on Joy News Prime. Mr. Greenstreet, you're on Joy News Prime, and good to have you.
I'm glad to be on. It's been a while. But I'd like to, first of all, point out some inaccuracies in your initial statements. May I do that?
Go ahead.
You will note that in 1979, there was an election in which the thread of the CPP was elected into power until it was illegally overthrown on the 31st of December 1981.
Correct.
That is a correction I want to make.
Okay, so at least the CPP has been able to gain power, but it was overthrown. Well, I just want to congratulate you for your 71st anniversary. But with all that has been happening in your party, some may say the theme for your party celebration, Fostering Peace and Unity, the way forward for the CPP, suggests the party is fractured. Do you agree with this school of thought?
You would have to elaborate further before I can suggest whether I agree or not. On what basis do you make that remark?
I mean, based on how people perceive the party as it is now.
So you're assuming that the basis upon which people perceive the party is purely on its internal issues or divisiveness?
Well, that's why we want to find out from the horse's own mouth, because you're a member of the CPP. You can tell us, you know the party
I'm still a member, but you made a categorical statement that that was the case, implying that perhaps that was your opinion. Is that your opinion?
I said people perceive. That's what I said. That's what the perception out there.
I see. Well, certainly, yes. In recent dates, certainly in the Fourth Republic, the party hasn't performed well at elections. Whether the failure to perform well has been purely for that reason, or whether it has been due to the structure of our politics at this time, there are many people who have different views. But certainly there are a lot of things that we clearly have to do far better if we are to be seen as a potential party to rule this nation and to take ourselves into where we believe Ghana should be. Clearly, any Ghanaian at the moment, whether an NDC voter or an NPP voter, would not have been happy with the achievements that have been achieved since the beginning of 1992 and this current democratic dispensation, although there are many good things as well. But the reality is, if you look at our society and the opportunities that are made available to its people to progress in their daily lives, far more has to be done to achieve greater satisfaction.
I see that you're trying to argue that there are no some kind of cracks in the party. These are some of the things we see in all the political parties, including the NDC, the NPP, and I presume the CPP is no different.
There are no cracks in the party. There are cracks in marriages between two human beings. Definitely there'll be cracks in larger human institutions like political parties. I certainly would never suggest that. There are cracks. There are cracks in CPP, cracks, as you say, in all other political parties. And it's important that we as a party find internal mechanisms and ways of solving those cracks so we can present a united front based on the ideas that we believe we have, which are entirely different to the MPP and the NDP, to try and improve the fortunes of this nation.
So 6 months into elections, we've been waiting for a flag bearer to be chosen by the CPP. You haven't presented one to us yet. What's your plan? What's actually the CPP's plan for the 2020 elections?
Well, I believe even the NPP have not presented their flag bearer. If you look at their own constitution,
last week they announced that the president Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo should go unopposed. So that's their flag bearer.
Well, what I can tell you about the CPP is that we have entirely completed all constituency elections, all regional congresses, which were completed towards the end of last year. At the beginning of this year, yes, we have had some internal problems with some party members who have different views about the way some things were conducted, but that has also been affected by the intervening process of COVID, which has affected the country in its entirety. But as we speak, there are interventions being made by the Council of Elders and other well-meaning senior members of the party to try and deal with those issues and to try and present a timetable for the election of new national executives and the presidential candidate.
So going forward, what are you presenting to Ghanaians? What should we expect in the next few days, months to the 2020 elections from the CPP?
Well, clearly, first of all, we have to present those who would lead the party and those who would become the presidential candidates. And then on that basis, we would be presenting entirely different policies from which Ghanaians have been seeing so far. If you take a look at our country in terms of the natural wealth that it has, whether you talk about gold, oil, silver, bauxite, diamonds, cocoa, fertile lands, access to water resources, strong human beings, you would be amazed to know that, let's say, out of the gold that we have in our soil, currently Ghana as a nation earns no more than 3% from those resources. We will be bringing out policies for those who steer the affairs of the party to represent how we would attempt to change that. If you look at even what we earn from our oil and gas resources, I don't think the country earns more than 13% of those resources. And we are here talking about...
Hello, Mr. Greenstreet. You're still on Joy News Prime. I think we lost Mr. Ivor Greenstreet, who is 2016 flag bearer for the CPP. We're grateful for a time. We'll try and bring him back to complete his statement. We'll take a break on Joy News Prime. When we return, there is more in this bulletin. Assemblies lamenting inadequate logistics to carry out burials for persons who die from coronavirus. Health Officer Joseph Asitanga says environmental officers have to improvise from collecting the bodies at the morgues to the cemetery for burial, exposing them to high risk. He made the revelations when Joy News tagged along to observe the burial of 5 persons at the Awudome Cemetery here in Accra.
This is the Awudome Cemetery here in Accra, where the bodies of the persons infected with COVID are going to be interred. We are going to go in there and observe for ourselves exactly how this process of burial is conducted here at the Awudome Cemetery. Come with us. So what you see there right now are the environmental officials removing a third coffin from the hearse to add to the two that are already here, so that burial process will be quickly conducted. Again, this is heavily supervised by environmental workers. This is certainly not an easy job, if you ask me, because if you have been in a PPE like I am before, you would appreciate that wearing this and staying in it for more than 30 minutes can be a chore, and these people have been wearing this for more than 2 hours, just ensuring that these bodies are properly disposed of.
This is not only today. We started this from the last 7th day up to today, and we are still on it. Lot is there. We persistently carry this exercise every week, twice every week, and today we're burying 5 at a go. We're going to bury more. Saturday we have another burial, and it's going to continue and continue. We only want to alert the public. The purpose of this is to tell the public, every family member, every Ghanaian, the COVID is there. The COVID is real, and therefore protect yourself, observe the national protocol measures to protect yourself, protect your family, and let's protect the country image as a whole.
I see this is not easy. You are sweating. I am suffocating because I've not done this before, but you people do this every time. So that's you just heard from Inspector Joseph Asitanga there. This certainly is not child's play. There you see lay 3 caskets, 3 coffins of 3 individuals, breadwinners possibly, husbands, fathers, brothers, uncles, just lay there in those coffins, having been struck by this particular virus, which we have been speaking about for some time now. People seem to doubt the existence of this virus, giving all sorts of explanations and myths why they disbelieve that the virus is real. But you can see these are 3 people who have succumbed and are going to be buried. The first one has just been lowered in. They're going to lower the second also into the grave. And as you can see for yourself, this certainly is not an easy process. So it's just been lowered into the grave. The second one has been lowered into the grave. And then the third. You were telling me about some challenge you have when you are doing this particular exercise.
Yes, the burial. The challenges we have is enormous. These bodies, they are infectious bodies, which we don't have to use the public haste in transporting the bodies to this infectious zone. We have made appeal to the state, the government, to support us with a movable and befitting double cabin pickups that we can always carry these bodies safely to the burial site. You can see that the movement through where we will bring the bodies to is a serious challenge. There is no adequate space for movement coming into the place. Is difficult, and the hearse has to stop at the end of the entrance. The officers have to carry this body. Imagine how heavy it is with these 3 stumps. There's the possibility and high risk of infection to the officers, and therefore if we have a good transport system that this body is placed in and it moves closer to the grave space, we will have easy way of removing the body and placing it safely.
How about the
You heard that Sitanga, who is a environmental public officer at the AMA. We're still live on Joy News Prime. Remember, we're free to air because we're on DTT. We'll be back shortly with the editorial on Joy News Prime.
It's exactly 3 months since we recorded our first coronavirus cases. We started with 2 on March 12, We are now at 10,856 today, June 12. And it's only 3 months. You must have heard the popular phrase, "Kwata kwata by June, dear." We're in June. We're not dead yet, thankfully, but we are seeing our cases continuing to rise and a worrying change in attitudes by both government and the citizenry, which, if not checked, could lead us into the valley of death, literally. First of all, we're not practicing social distancing. Watcher lines have literally gone back to how they were. No social distancing whatsoever. Market women continue to sell close to each other, perhaps more interested in trying to eke out a living as they push the threat of the disease behind them. And when it comes to the face masks, the least said, the better.
Angle from one ear to another, while others rest around the neck. That is 30-year-old Foster Bafo, a bread seller trying to get the attention of potential buyers. He says it is difficult to call out potential clients with his mask covering the nose and mouth.
It's down because I'm shouting A1, and if it's on, when I shout, they don't hear the A1 properly. That's why I put it down for me to shout for them to hear A1.
Even in Parliament, where people expected to exhibit strict adherence to the law and directives, especially because they are lawmakers, the indiscipline persists. In Parliament today, the leadership and the COVID-19 team were frustrated because MPs and staff who have tested positive for COVID-19 are refusing to stay home.
Speaker, you and leadership arranged for all of us to be tested for the coronavirus disease that unfortunately has engulfed this country. The arrangement was that anybody who unfortunately tested positive would not be openly identified, but that the testing team would have an arrangement to contact them behind the curtains and have the situation managed.
So why would you want to put others at risk? Why? I mean, it's also amazing that some citizens in this day and age don't believe that the deadly disease exists. Perhaps that explains why so many people are so lax about the disease. The coronavirus has claimed at least 48 lives in Ghana, and you don't find that alarming?
It's terrible. It's a challenge, and that is a call to duty by the Environmental Health Department of Accra Metro Assembly, Metro Public Health. This is not only today. We started this from the last 7th day up to today, and we are still on it. Lot is there. We persistently carry this exercise every week, and today we're burying 5 at a go. We're going to bury more. Saturday we have another burial, and it's going to continue and continue. We only want to alert the public. The COVID is there. The COVID is real. And therefore, protect yourself, observe the national protocol measures to protect yourself, protect your family, and let's protect the country image as a whole.
Well, if that doesn't shake you to the core, then watch these scenes. So we should be careful we don't reach this point. But with treatment centers getting full and health workers contracting the disease and our figures rising steadily and public education slowing down, it begs the question, are the responsible officials handling the situation as effectively as expected?
We will protect people's lives, then their livelihoods.
Mr. President, I think this protection must come fast. You gave us this assurance when our case count stood at 1,000. We are now at almost 11,000. Of course, this is a shared responsibility between government and the citizenry. But you wield the power. The lives of our fathers, our mothers and children are in your hands. Nane Kufuado, this is when we need your assured protection the most. The numbers are rising, and so is the nation's need of your protection. Real practical action and not just rhetoric. Hello everyone, welcome back to business. The tourism sector has been hard hit by COVID-19 pandemic, and with the easing of restrictions, hotels are set to reopen fully on Monday, June 15. Inshirado took a trip to the Labadi Beach Hotel to observe preparations ahead of reopening.
And it's not only about the fact that people aren't coming in because of the lockdown, but also it would be counted in terms of human capital. How have you managed that?
It's been extremely difficult, of course. On the back of a very strong year last year, our reserves have allowed us to reach a compromise with the staff in order so they are sustained and not been laid off like so many others, unfortunately, in this bad situation we find ourselves in. But it's something we've been able to maintain so far. And now that we are looking at reopening again, I'm delighted to say we hope that we have weathered the worst of the storm.
In terms of your conferencing and banqueting offering, should that pick up again, how are you ensuring that the safety of those who are coming in post-COVID is assured?
The short answer is yes, indeed. That part of it has been devastating as well, because we are busy throughout the year. We've got a very strong presence in the marketplace and very much based on local businesses and so forth. In order to ensure that they feel confident and they feel secure here, obviously we put all the measures that you can think of in place to ensure that people have a safe environment. So from safe distancing to all the all-knowing temperature checks, sanitizing, hand washing and masks and so forth is very much in place. The most important aspect for us, especially in the conference department, would be in the social distancing. So we've had to re-look at a whole setup structure in our conference and banqueting department to ensure that we are complying with all the rules, and we are doing that famously.
In terms of recovery, how long do you think it will take for you to see the kind of success you saw maybe Q4 of 2019?
Where's your crystal ball? I think that Q4 we should see some sort of recovery for sure. If it's back to the days of last year, no. That's going to take some time for sure. We need to get trust, and we need to get the belief back in society that we are taking the measures and we're all observing the measures in order to make sure that we are safe and so forth. That's not something which is given, that is
The hit to your bottom line is not only about the fact that people aren't coming in because of the lockdown, but also it would be counted in terms of human capital. How have you managed that?
It's been extremely difficult, of course. On the back of a very strong year last year, our reserves have allowed us to reach a compromise with the staff in order so they are sustained and not been laid off like so many others, unfortunately, in this bad situation we find ourselves in.
Certainly, the industry can't wait to get back. And still on the coronavirus, the pandemic is set to cost Premier League clubs £1 billion in the 2019-2020 season. This is according to financial services firm Deloitte. With the games returning in just few days, how bad is the situation going to be? My man, Gary L. Smith of the Sports Desk team, Joy News Sports team, joins me for a discussion via Zoom. Hello, Gary.
Hi, Sandra.
I choose my man carefully. And I think that it's just fair that we do more sports, especially after that excellent production from the sports team yesterday on PM Express. Is that flattering?
Sort of.
All right, straight, let's move on. I mean, the 20 English top flight clubs had a combined revenue of more than $5 billion during the 2018-2019, the biggest so far. But that has certainly changed. Now that we have about 92 games, if I'm sure, remaining games to play, and they will be playing them behind closed doors. How is that going to affect the revenue, especially when it comes to broadcasting deals?
Well, yes, thank you. First of all, the biggest way the Premier League clubs get their money is through broadcasting deals. The second is through commercial sponsorships. And then third is match day revenue. So match day revenue is actually the third biggest way that they get their money. So how would it affect the broadcasting sponsorships? I don't think it will affect it incrementally, if you like, because the contracts have already been signed. The games are going to be played, so there's going to be that visibility. So it means then that nobody has to cancel their contracts, and that's what we are seeing. What will be affected, Sandra, is the match day revenue, because obviously people will not buy tickets to go into the stadia. But don't forget, most teams in England, for example, in the Premier League, get a lot of their money from season tickets. So that is where they can expect to recoup their money. However, some clubs have decided to be socially responsible to the extent that they are refunding whatever has been paid for the season. So that is where they might make losses. But there have been arguments today that despite the reading from Deloitte and the fact that so much money is being estimated to be lost, it is actually good for the game because, people feel that there is such a thing as too much money in football, and that this period that is seeing a contraction in the revenues will force football to look for more innovative ways. But that's for history to judge, I guess.
Yes, talking about, innovations in football. Yesterday on PM Express, Carol Chabalala actually mentioned that technology is going to play a big role when the games return. How much is technology going to play an impact on the game moving forward?
Well, in places like Denmark, 2 weeks ago, we had an interview with a Danish journalist who, you may recall, when their leagues were starting, he said that they were using Zoom to replace the fans in the stadium. So what it is that they were having these huge, what do you call it? The things they use at the concerts. And so they were giving their fans the opportunity to log in via Zoom and cheer their players on. So that is probably one way that technology is going to change. Yesterday, we had a representative of La Liga also on the show who mentioned that, they are using fake noise in the broadcast. So just like we at Joy FM puts a bed of fans cheering in our commentaries to create an ambience and atmosphere, they are doing it on the television as well. And they are also using fake fans in the stadium, just like you see in the video games. So already these are 3 ways that we are seeing technology impacts the way football is experienced. But for we, the journalists as well, right now, if you look at all the major international networks, some countries in Scandinavia and elsewhere where football has started are doing their pre-match and post-match press conferences via Zoom without any physical contact at all. So that means that they are, yes. And then what is happening also is that in the Bundesliga, because of technology, the mixed zone press conferences are not being done, physically. They are putting spaces between the players and the journalists. Right. And so that is how they are getting their interviews.
Interesting. We wait to see how it pans out. But again, let's talk about, England and the Premier League has a culture where they have a way of preventing people from watching football games at home. And so that is just to encourage people to go to the stadia. With this new, reforms, if I can call it, people are no longer going to go to the stadia. And so what does that mean for TV rights and games that will be shown on TV?
Well, first of all, like I said, the TV rights deals have already been signed, so they are not going to be affected in that space. But to answer you more specifically, Sandra, as those who are watching may know, the BBC World Service, because it's a public trust, did not have the kind of money that the private broadcasters such as Sky and BT Sport and Amazon were paying for the Premier League. And so for many, many years, they were not showing the live games. They were showing only highlights. However, because we are not in normal times, the Premier League have decided that because the BBC, have the highest public viewership in the UK, right, they're actually giving them some of the games for free. So they are giving the BBC 4 games to show for free. And then what Sky are doing is that if you are already subscribed to Sky, they are giving you all the Premier League games for free without any additional subscription. The same is being done also, yes, by Amazon. So BBC, people are in the UK for the first time in their lives, people your age, my age, are going to see Premier League football for the first time on the BBC, for the first time, in about 35
Very
or 40 years.
Interesting. We wait to see how that goes. But again, let's take a look at the broadcasting revenue for the EPL from 2014, and it's coming up on your screens right now. If you can see, we start from the bottom, and it's 2014-2015 season, and it's 1,780 million pounds. And then 2015-2016, we had 1.92 million pounds also. And when you go down up up to the 2019-2020 season is over £3 million. And I said earlier that the projection is about £5 billion. And so I asked earlier, let me ask you before you go, is it going to get worse in terms of revenue?
As you can see from the figures, the Premier League is an absolutely money-making machine. And, you know, even if the monies go down, Sandra, they won't be too affected because some people have said that the Premier League's biggest problem is actually that they have too much money, you know. Yeah, and so this may be the reality check that they need. But believe me, I think you and I are more worried than the Premier League about the revenue because they are fine.
Certainly, okay. But Gary, before I let you go, I think you agree with me that Liverpool are the champions already, and it's just fair for you to officially congratulate me on TV. Let me take my credit. Congratulations
to Liverpool for winning the 2019-2020 title. We are just waiting for your celebration via Zoom. We'll be there and join you via Zoom.
You're always welcome to the family, Gary Al Smith. Thanks so much for joining me this evening. We'll move to the commodity market now to see how trading ended for the week. And that will be all for business for the week with me, Sandra Esinam. And you can get more news on our website, myjoyonline.com/business. Thanks so much for watching. Do stay home, stay safe, and stay beautiful.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the second segment of sports here on the Joy News Prime with me, Oreku Ampo. Finally, to some football news, and Premier League color commentator Jim Beglin says that a return of football might be risky. Now, according to him, despite all the measures put in place, he believes that, you know, football returning is inviting danger to the health of football players. He was speaking on PM Express last night.
It's too risky. None of us want to see a second wave because that could really knock us back, and who knows what would happen then. But just listening to Richard Masters, the CEO of the Premier League, in an interview recently, he said, I think there'll be about 300 people, which I think is the same in the Bundesliga, that will be allowed into the stadiums to begin with. But they won't think about bringing fans into the stadiums until next season, when they begin to phase it in, perhaps slowly. And of course, they're going to be in dialogue an awful lot to figure out when they'll actually be able to start that and how we'll be able to get going again. I mean, lockdown rules in the UK are easy. There's no doubt about that. And the 2-meter rule looks as if it's about to be suspended. But in terms of football matches, it's still inviting too much danger.
Well, that wraps it up for the sports segment here on the Joy News Prime. My name is Oreku Ampofo, and do have a fantastic weekend.
Time for the interactive segment, and rather on a sad note, presiding member of the Second Takoradi Metropolitan Assembly, Kwesi Bachman, has confirmed to Joy News that the mayor of the Metropolitan Assembly, Anthony Kobina, Sam, is dead. Now, our correspondent Inathalia Kwanza joins us on the line for more. Inathalia, what more can you say about this?
Yes, Aisha. So, as to the cause of his death is yet to be known, but we understand that he died today and he has not been well for some weeks now. So, the family is yet to speak. The family is yet to also issue a communique on this.
Well, we wish his family well, and may he so rest in peace. Thank you very much, Inathalia, for the information there. We posted this on our Facebook page. The EC boss has also been talking today, and she says that we need the new voters register. Otherwise, we could mar the upcoming elections. It could affect the results and credibility of that election. And that's what we posted. It's generated 330 comments, 110 shares, and 409 likes. A lot of comments comments coming up. Let me take a few of them. Kwesi Edramwa says this means that every 8 years we will have to spend money compiling a new register since the machines will reach their end of life and we can't migrate the data onto a new system. Tell this to the kindergarten kids. Only gullible MPP supporters will believe this justification. Chris Jebu says then the express banks change and upgrade operating system, but don't ask us to come and re-register to keep our financial information. Abdul Karim Khalid says she's fumbling. If the truth is not on your side, that's what happens. Why didn't she talk about the exclusion of the voter ID card? Please, if she gave you explanation, let us see. George Gakbeto says, Madam Charlotte Osei is such a confident communicator, but look at how she's just fumbling and not in control of the information. Isaac Mensah says her whole body language and the way her voice is shaking tell us that she's just being punched to do this. How can a register that gave her government 1 million votes margin is no longer credible all of a sudden? I mean, I don't get it. Adria Daniel says we don't need voters register at this time. We need peace in this 2020 elections and will depend on you. There has to be understanding between all the political parties. What you are planning to do is totally wrong. Be very, very careful. And John Anthony DJMF says, Madam, just do your mandatory work. It's your duty. You will be held responsible if we encounter any challenge during the election. So do what you think is right to make the process a success. Autry Kujo says, continue doing it. NDC did the same. Brought Charlotte to say, but along last they lost the stakes they used to Kintechi is there for Ba. And those are your comments on Facebook. And that'll be it for the interactive segment. That also wraps up for the bulletin tonight. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Many thanks for watching. Enjoy the rest of our programs.